Hello everyone. This video is a revision video of my course Python Beginner Course 2024. So if you haven't watched it, please watch it and come to this revision video. So in this video, we'll discuss all those important points discussed in the course in short. So here I've opened PyCharm and I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to give a project name as revision and make sure the version of Python is the latest version and click create. Once the virtual environment is created, you have the folder here in the left hand side corner. Create a Python file, right click on it, go to new and Python file. Here I'll type the name of the file as main and click on Python file. So here we have main.py. Anything with the .py extension is a Python file. And this file is within the project revision. So in the course, we have seen 4 ways of storing data. One is through variables, another is through lists, through tuples or tuples, then through dictionaries. From line 2 to line 5, I've created 4 variables and stored different types of data to it. Here we have an integer, a floating number, a boolean value, and a string. We know it is a string because it is within quotations. So strings are within double quotations or single quotations. So using the assignment operator, I have assigned these values to the concerned variables. Now, the second way of storing data is through lists, and lists are defined by square brackets. We can store data of any type within these lists. So here we have 3 strings, a number and a boolean value separated by a comma. So we can have any type of data within a list, and each data here is referred to as an element, and each element has a defined index. Index in lists always starts with 0. So John is 0, Sam is 1, Max is 2, and so on. We also have negative indexes which starts from the last element. So the last element is false here, so its index is -1, then 3 is -2, Max is -3, and so on. The next way of storing data is through tuples or tuples, and it is defined by parentheses. So inside the parentheses, we can store any type of data, but the only difference is that tuples once created cannot be edited. That is, you can't remove or add new data to it. Whereas lists, we can do those things. The next type of storing data is through dictionaries, and it is defined by curly brackets, and within curly brackets we have a key value pair. So here I have created 2 key value pairs separated by a comma, and each value can be accessed with the help of its key. The key can either be a string or a number, but the value associated with it can be of any type. The key and the value are separated by a colon. One more thing I forgot to tell is that tuples can also be accessed through their indexes. As with lists, we can do that same thing with tuples. So here I've created 4 print functions. So what is a print function? Print function is used to print something in the output. So inside the print function, to print the value associated with the variable, I'm passing the variable name here. To print something from the list, first I have to type the list name followed by a square bracket, and inside the square bracket I have to mention the index of that element. So here the index is 2, so 2 corresponds to max. So here I am trying to print max. Next, the same thing applies for tuples. First we write the tuple name followed by the index of the element which we want to print. So here I am printing the first element, which is 3. Next, to print a value from a dictionary, we have to specify its key within the square brackets. So first we write the dictionary name followed by the square brackets, then we write the key whose value we want to print. So in short, if we want to print a value associated with a variable, we just pass the variable name inside the print function. Whereas with the lists, tuples or dictionary, we first write the name of the concerned list, tuple or dictionary, followed by an open and closed square brackets. And inside the square brackets, if it is a list or a tuple, we specify the index of the element we want to print, and in case of a dictionary, we pass the key whose value we need to print. You can also note that these gray values which are comments. So I've used hashtag here followed by the comment. So whenever we use a hashtag, whatever follows it will not be executed by PyCharm. So all these lines, that is line 1, line 6, line 8, 10 and 12 won't be executed by PyCharm. Another way of using comments is by using triple single quotes or triple double quotes. Now let's see certain topics which we can use with print function. So in line 1 and 2, I have two variables called age and name. Age has been assigned an integer 26 and name has been assigned a string John. So in order to print a greeting message, hello John, I have used in line 4 along with the print function the plus operator to concatenate two strings. That is, the string hello is concatenated with the string associated with the name, that is John. So you get a message hello John. So using the plus operator, we can concatenate two strings. But if we concatenate a string with a number, for example, if instead of name we pass in age here, this will lead to an error. To overcome this error, we can either use type conversion or an F string. In type conversion, we just pass the name of the variable whose value is a number inside an str function. So str function converts anything which is passed inside it into a string, and this is called as type conversion. Now we have two strings which can be concatenated using the plus operator. Another way to overcome this error is using F string. So in order to write an F string, inside the parenthesis of the print function, first we type the letter F, then we open the quotations, and inside it we are going to type the message which we want to print. To pass the variable inside the string, we have to use the curly brackets as done here. So this entire message will be read as John is 26 years old. Note that the variable age has a number here, and since we use the formatting string, this won't result in an error. Next, I've used something called \n in line 13. So when \n is used inside a string, it will print whatever message is after that in the next line. Similarly, we can use \t to introduce a tab character. So in order to get an input from a user, we use the input function. So whatever question we pass inside the input function, this will be printed in the output, and the program will wait for the user's entry. Once the user enters a value, whatever the value, that is whether it is an alphabet or a number, it always returns it as a string. Now this is very important to note that input function always returns a string, and that string we can store it inside a variable as done here in line 1. Note, since it returns a string, we can use something called string methods along with the input function. And in line 1, I've used the title method to make the first character of the word into an uppercase character. Similarly, we can use the upper method, lower method, capitalize method, and any string method can be used with the input function. In line 2, I have used the int function and passed the entire input function inside it to convert whatever string which the user enters into an integer. So here I'm asking the question, enter your age, which will be a number. So even if the user enters 23, that 23 will be returned as a string within quotations. So when I use the int function here, this 23 will be converted into the actual number 23, and that will be stored inside the variable age. So here you can see I've used the split function along with the input function, and inside the split function I have defined within quotations a comma. So what I'm trying to say is whatever the user enters for this question, wherever he uses a comma, it is going to split whatever is before it and after it, and those will be stored as separate elements inside a list, and that list we are going to assign it to the variable called name. If nothing is specified within the split function, then it's going to split the string based on a space character. So what is a while loop? A while loop, when used, will execute a block of code until the condition associated with it is false. So here I've created a while loop in line 2 and 3 using the while keyword. And the condition I've given is a greater than 0. We know a has been assigned a value called 5. Hence, this condition a greater than 0 will return a boolean true, and whatever block of code is inside the while loop, since the condition is true, will be executed. So it prints the message a is greater than 5. After it prints the message, it again goes back to line 2 and checks the condition a is greater than 0. Again this is true, again the loop continues. So this loop will keep on being executed until this condition returns a false. It is very important while defining a condition to include a piece of code to break out of the loop. So this here, that is the condition defined here, will result in an infinite loop because a will be always greater than 0, and this message will be printed continuously until the program crashes. So to overcome this, we can either use a break statement, or we can write a code in order to change the value of a every time this block of code is executed. So I'll reassign the value of a, subtracting it by 1 every time the loop runs. So whenever this condition is true, this piece of code gets executed, and when it comes to line 4, 1 is subtracted from 5 and that new value is assigned back to a. So a now is assigned a value 4. Now a is greater than 0. Again this continues. Now a will become 3. Now again this loop continues until the value reaches 0, where the while loop condition is false and the while loop will end. So while defining a while loop, make sure that you add a piece of code to break out of the while loop. Now here we have a tuple called tuple1. We know it is a tuple because I've used the parenthesis. And inside the parenthesis we have two elements, Sam and 44. We know that once tuples are created, they are immutable. That is, we cannot add a new element or we cannot modify an existing element. So it is immutable. We can access the elements of the tuple as we have seen along with the print function by using the index of the tuple. So in order to access the element Sam, we have to use the index 0, and to access 44, we have to use the index 1. But if we know the elements inside the tuple and their order, we can use tuple unpacking and store the elements of the tuple into separate variables. So here I've used the tuple unpacking to unpack the elements inside the tuple 1 into two variables, name and age, separated by a comma. So Sam will be assigned to the variable name and 44 will be assigned to the variable age. And these variables can be used separately in the subsequent code. So coming to lists, here I have created a list on line 1 called list1. We know this is a list because I've used these square brackets, and inside this list we have 3 elements, and all these 3 elements are strings. But we can also have numbers and boolean values. So we'll see what we can do with the elements of this list. So to add a new element to the existing list, we can use the append function. So in order to do that, first we type the list name followed by a dot, then the append function. Inside the parenthesis, we pass the value which we want to add as an element inside the list. And whatever element is added, it will be added at the end of the list. To add a new list to the existing list, or to add multiple elements to the existing list, we can use the extend function. If we already have a list which we want to add, we directly write the list name inside the parenthesis. If not, here I am trying to add 2 elements. So if we want to add more than one element, then we pass that inside a list and we pass that entire list inside the extend function. So this will be added at the end of the existing list. Now to change an element in the list, we use the index of that element and assign a new value to it. So here I have the list name followed by square brackets, and inside the square brackets I've written the index 1, which corresponds to John. So I'm going to change this value John to carry. To delete an element from the list, we use the remove function. And inside the remove function, we enter the value which we want to delete. So here, the value Sam will be deleted from this list. Let's say we want to delete a value, and that value we have to store it in a variable. In that situation, we can use the pop function. But if we use the pop function, we have to specify the index of the element which we want to remove from the list. So here 0 refers to Sam. So Sam will be removed and it will be assigned to a variable called name. If we don't specify any index inside the pop function, it will by default take the last element in the list and it will remove that element. Now there are other methods which we can also use with list. When we use the count method and pass an element inside it, it will count how many times that element is inside the main list. If we use the sort function along with the list, it will sort the list according to the alphabetical order, or if the list contains numerical values, it will sort it in the ascending order. If we use the reverse method, then it will reverse the order of the entire list. Next, we'll see nested lists. So here in line 1 and 2, we have two lists called list 1 and list 2. In line 4, I have created a nested list called main list. What is a nested list? A nested list is a list whose elements are itself a list. So the elements here are list 1 and list 2. We know list 1 is by itself a list and list 2 is also a list. So this list, which is called as main list in line 4, is a nested list. In order to access an element inside the nested list, we have to use multiple indexes to get to the element which we require. For example, let's say we want to print this element Sam from list 2, but by using the nested list main list. So first we type the nested list name, which is main list, followed by the list which contains the element. So here Sam is inside the list called list 2. Inside the nested list, the list 2 has an index 1 because always list starts with an index 0. So list 1 is 0 and list 2 is 1. So first we'll write the index of the list which we want to access. Then once we get into the list, we'll type the index of the element which we want, which is Sam. So Sam has an index 0 that I've typed inside the square brackets here. Here we'll discuss the concept of slicing. So slicing is used to take a portion of a sequence, and that sequence can either be a string as in line 1, which is stored inside the variable called name, or it can be a list as in line 2, or it can be a tuple as in line 3. So here we are going to take part of these sequences using slicing. So in line 6 and 7, I used slicing to take the first name and the last name from this entire string and stored it into its appropriate variable. So in order to use slicing, first we have to write the variable name followed by a square brackets. Inside the square brackets, we have to specify the start number followed by a colon, then the stop number. If we don't specify the start number, it will take as default an index 0. If we don't specify a stop number, by default it will take the last element. So here in line 6, I am going to slice the string John Carter from the index 0 till the index 3. Although I have written 4 here, it will take from 0 till 3. So 0 is J, 1 is O, 2 is H and 3 is N. So it will take John here and store it inside the variable first name. On line 7, I've used the starting index of 5. So 5 is C here and I have not entered any ending index. So it will take from 5 to the end of the string. So Carter will be assigned to the variable last name. The same concept is applied to slice a list or a tuple. So here I'm slicing the list 1. I have not entered the starting index, so it will by default take an index 0 and the stop index is 2. So it will take Sam, which has an index 0, and John, which has an index 1, and this will be assigned to the new list. Remember always, when we enter the stopping index, it will take the element 1 index less than it. So if this is 2, then it will take till the index 1, which is John. Same concept applies to tuples also. So here I am slicing from the element 1 to the element 3. So it will take from 33 and 44. So these two will be taken and it will be stored as a tuple inside new tuple. Let's now discuss some concepts related to dictionaries. So in line 1, I have a dictionary called dict1. We know it is a dictionary because dictionaries are defined by curly brackets, and inside the curly brackets we have a key value pair separated by a colon. So here in this dictionary I have three key value pairs, 1, 2 and 3. So each key value pair here is separated by a colon, and here the keys are strings whereas the values are strings and numerical value. Remember, keys can either be strings or numerical values, but a value can be of any data type. To add a new key value pair, we have to first type the dictionary name followed by a square brackets, and inside the square brackets we'll type the new key and assign a value using the assignment operator. So this key value pair, that is phone number 1234, will be added inside the dictionary dict1. To change the value of an existing key, for example, let's change the value of 33, and the key associated with 33 is age. We are going to use this key to change the value 33 into 34. The syntax is quite similar as if we are adding a value, except we are going to use the key which is already present inside the dictionary whose value we want to change. So I'll pass the key inside here and assign a new value to it. To delete a key value pair, we can use the del keyword followed by the dictionary name, and inside the square brackets we'll pass the key so that the entire key value pair will be deleted from the dictionary. There is one more way we can delete a key value pair, and that is using the pop function. So first we write the dictionary name followed by a dot, then the pop function, and inside the pop function we'll enter the key so that the concerned key value pair is taken out from the dictionary, and we can store that key value pair inside a variable as done in line 13. So when we want to permanently delete a key value pair, we can use a del keyword. If we want to delete a key value pair from a dictionary, but we want to store it separately, then we can use the pop function. Now let's talk about nested dictionaries. Here in line 1 and line 2, we have two dictionaries. We know it's a dictionary because we have used curly brackets and there is a key value pair. Inside each dictionary, we have two key value pairs separated by a comma. On line 3, I've created a nested dictionary called all persons. We know it is a nested dictionary because the value of the dictionary itself is a dictionary. So we know person 1 is a dictionary as in line 1, and person 2 is another dictionary as given in line 2. Note here that I've used the key as numbers here. So we can either use strings or numbers. Now to access an element from the nested dictionary, we have to use multiple keys. Remember, in list we used multiple indexes. Here we are using multiple keys. Let's say for example we want to change the value associated with the key age into 27. So to do that, if we are going to access it through the nested dictionary, first we write the nested dictionary name followed by an open and closed square brackets. Next, we are going to gain access to this dictionary. We know that the key of this dictionary is 2 here. So we pass the key inside the square brackets. Now once we have gained access to this dictionary, then we are going to pass the key whose value we need to change. So here I've entered the key age, then I'm assigning a new value 27 using the assignment operator to this key age. Now we'll discuss something about for loops. For loops are used to iterate over sequences like range function, strings, lists, tuples, and dictionaries. Before we look at the for loops, let's look at the range function. Range function are used to generate a sequence of numbers. Inside the range function, we have to specify three numbers, which is a start number followed by a stop number and a step number. If we don't specify a start number, by default it will be taken as 0, and if we don't specify a step number, by default it will be taken as 1. Here it will generate numbers from 1 to 4, and since we have used a for loop, this block of code will be executed 4 times, and each time it is executed, the x variable will be assigned different values. That is, first it will be assigned a value 1, then it will be assigned a value 2, then 3, then 4. So this is called iteration. That is, performing a piece of code n number of times, and here we are performing it 4 times. Next, I've used a for loop along with a string. So this string hello, which is stored inside the variable a, I'm going to iterate over the characters of this string. So to do that, I've used a for loop followed by a variable called letter. You can use any name as a variable. Since we are going to be dealing with each letter of the string, I've used an appropriate variable. Then I'm specified the in keyword. After that, I have written the variable name followed by a colon. So each time this line 8 is executed, it is going to take each character one at a time, and it will assign it to this variable, and this piece of code will get executed every time. So first h will be taken, assigned to letter, and h will be printed. Next e will be taken, assigned to letter, then e will be printed. So this iteration over the string continues until all characters of the strings are printed. Similarly, when used with the lists, it is going to take each element from the list, which will be assigned to the variable, and that can be used inside the for block of code. The same goes for tuples, but if we know the content and order of the tuples, we can use tuple unpacking and use it separately inside the for block of code. Now here we'll see how we can use for loop along with dictionaries. So in line 3 we have a dictionary which has two key value pairs. In order to take only the keys of the dictionary, we can just type the dictionary name in the for loop. So here I have created a for loop by typing the keyword for followed by a variable called x, followed by the in keyword, then the name of the dictionary followed by a colon. So each time this gets executed, it is going to take only the key. So first name will be taken, assigned to x, then this block gets executed. Next age will be taken, assigned to x, then this block will get executed. Similarly, we can use the key method along with the dictionary, and this code will also do exactly what line 6 does. It is going to take only the keys and is going to assign it to the variable, then the block of code will get executed. If we want to take only the value of the dictionary, then we can use the value method along with the dictionary. So this piece of code in line 13 will take only the value from the dictionary. So first it will take John, assigns to x. This piece of code gets executed. Then it is going to take the value 22, assigns to x. Then this piece of code gets executed. Now, what if we want to work with both the key value pairs? Then we can use something called as the item method along with the dictionary. So if we use the item method, the entire key value pair is taken as a tuple, and that tuple can be unpacked using tuple unpacking, and those variables can be used inside the for block of code. When we use the enumerate function along with for loop, it is going to take each element from the list along with the index in a specific order. That is, index followed by the element. And this is taken as a tuple, and that tuple can be unpacked using tuple unpacking. Now let's look at if, elif, and else statements. So these statements are used if we want to perform a block of code depending on a particular condition. So here I've created a variable called a which has a value 5. Using the if keyword, I've defined a condition a greater than 0. If this condition is true, then the if block of code associated with it will be executed. Next, I've created an elif statement. That is, if this condition returns false, then line 5 will get executed and it will check this condition associated with the elif, whether a is less than 0. If this returns a true boolean value, then this elif block of code will get executed. Remember, you can have as many elif block of codes as you want with different conditions. If both if and elif block of code returns a false boolean value, then alone the else block of code will get executed. Both the else block of code and elif block of code are optional. Now let's see how to define our own function. We can define our own function using the def keyword. So in line 3, I've defined a function called wish using the def keyword. Inside the function wish, I have defined two parameters, name and year. Remember, you can have any number of parameters as you want inside a function. Next, inside the function, I have two print statements which are going to use these two parameters. Parameters are nothing but variables to which a value can be assigned while calling a function. Next, we are going to call this function by typing the function name, and inside the function we are going to give values called arguments so that these values can be assigned to the concerned parameter. So these arguments are of two types. One is called as positional arguments, another is called as keyword arguments. Positional arguments are used when you know exactly the order in which you have defined the parameters inside the function. We know name comes first, then year comes second. Since name comes first, we can directly enter the name which we want to assign it to this parameter called name. This is called as positional arguments. If we don't know the order of the parameters, then we can use something called keyword arguments. That is, we specify the parameter name first, then assign the value to that parameter using the assignment operator. Remember, you should always call a function only after defining the function. We can also add default values to the parameter so that whenever we call a function, if we don't specify that value, the default value will be taken and used inside the function. For example, let's say we don't define the name, and here we give to the parameter name a default value called stranger. I'll type here stranger. Now remember, always the default value which is assigned to the parameter should be at the last, or else it will lead to an error. So I'll type it after this parameter year. We can also use return statement along with the function. So in this function called add, which takes two values a and b, adds them and assigns it to a variable called sum of numbers. Here on line 5, I'm using the return keyword to return the value associated with this variable sum of numbers. So when we call this function, these numbers 2 and 3 will be added and the sum, which is 5, will be returned back to the same line, which can be assigned to a variable and used in the subsequent code. Note that whenever we use a return keyword, we should not include any code after the return keyword because that line of code will never be executed.